Dan Peña's best speech ever. I met Dan in February 1993 in California, long time ago. We've been partners for 25 years plus, and I still think that his Harvard Club speech of November 2nd, 1993 is his best. So I want to include that here for you. It'll be a longer podcast than normal, but I think you're going to find it's worth it. Tons of good takeaways in this. So, without further ado, Dan Peña at the Harvard Club, November 2nd, 1993.
Hi, this is Joe Mancuso, and you're in New York City at the Harvard Club. Today is November 2nd, Election Day, 1993, and you're here for a meeting of the Chief Executive Officers Club. The good news is we got a very full day today, and you've got a very entertaining luncheon speaker by the name of Dan Peña. Dan Peña is a entrepreneur extraordinaire, and we're going to have a lot of fun traveling to his castle in Scotland next spring. 45,000 square foot, 80 room castle. Dan Peña is going to talk to you today about a quantum leap. Enjoy, Dan Peña.
Thank you very much. I've been warned that this is the toughest crowd of the CEO Club group. And it's been recommended that I wear my hat or my face that I had when I used to live on 32nd in Lexington back in the early 70s when I was on Wall Street. But you don't look so tough to me, so I'm not going to do that, because the last time I gave the tough talk, which was at the management school, 50% of the attendees on a scale from 1 to 10 rated me at 11. 25% of the attendees said that they would never come back if I ever spoke again. If they saw me in the city, they would walk on the other side of the street. 25% said that I had a great deal of knowledge to put forth and to share, but they thought I was a little aggressive. Well, I am very aggressive, and I speak with a lot of passion. And what Joe has alluded to, I did take $820 and I turned it into $425 million and market capitalization. And in the process, I set a lot of goals and I fulfilled a lot of goals. And what we're going to talk about, which is really a combination of a lot of different talks I give. I have a talk, Do the Ends Justify the Means? And I have a talk, The CEO Sets the Tone. And I've got to talk about the CEO dealing with bankers, and they know because they just got up and left. I was one of the largest depositors in the chemical bank in Houston, and I had $80 million, and I yanked it out. So I guess they didn't want to hear that part of the story. And I have a talk, 5 Credos for Success. But we're not going to talk about any of those individual things. We're going to talk about a couple of things that have really become very prevalent since my exposure to the CEO clubs and CEM and Smoking Joe, as I call him, Mancuso. And yesterday I was at the Harvard Club. They were very specific. They tell me in Boston, the. You are going to a Harvard Club tomorrow. Now, I don't even know if there are more than 2 Harvard Clubs. Are there?
No.
So I guess there's the, and then there's A. And I guess you're A, so you're A on the list. So, I mean, but they made a big deal out of that yesterday. And not that I promised them that I'd tell you, but it's kind of reminiscent. I ran in the Boston Marathon in 1977. And it's hard to believe now since I've taken up weightlifting that I ran on the Boston Marathon. But I did, and I represented the Los Angeles Athletic Club, and I was part of a 5-person teams because we had one woman, and Mickey Gorman won the 77 Boston Marathon, and she was my teammate. She was a little lady, a little Japanese lady about this tall, weighed about 80 pounds. And so I had forgotten how Bostonians are. And even though I like the lobster, and I like some of the other things about Boston, they're erudite. It's tough to see the ground when you got your nose in the air that far. But I had a good time, and Keith Kretschmer, who I used to work for a lifetime ago, about 20 years ago, who's a lifetime CEO Club member, I stayed with him, and we reminisced about a lot of old times and how Wall Street used to be and how it is today. But I want to ask a question. I've heard a lot of talk about retirement, working until I'm going to drop dead, which is your exit strategy is then dropping dead with your head falling over on the desk. I've heard a lot of talk about is business good or is business bad. I heard the chairman of one of the largest banks in the country talk about that we're going to come out of this and that there's two basic elements to being an entrepreneur, and one is to have a dream and try to fulfill it, and one is to have the spirit to get out there and hustle and not be worried about a paycheck coming in and actually being responsible for yourself. And that's all well and good. But what my belief is, and some of the vignettes and stories that I'm going to say this afternoon, is a little different. I made my money when oil went from $40 a barrel to $8 a barrel. Because mine was a natural resource company. We're construction, coal, construction pipeline, drilling oil and gas. And I'm not an engineer. I'm not a geologist. I'm not a geophysicist. I know nothing. What you can put on the head of a pin is what I know about the oil business. And I'm a finance guy, formerly from Wall Street. Supposedly a financial wizard of the 70s. Michael Milken and I went to school together. I just left Wall Street before I could get in trouble. I mean, basically. Otherwise, I didn't think Mike did such bad things myself, but and Mike and I, we went to high school together, and he went on to Berkeley, and I know him, and so what I'm here to say is that irrespective of the recession, I only know how to make money in a down market. I don't know how to make money in an up market. So what I'm about to talk about ought to be germane to everybody's business here. It ought to be germane, because I don't know. If I ever got in an up market, I don't know. I'd probably die. I've never made any money. It's not just one company that I've built. The methodology and the precepts and what I call Peñaisms that we're going to talk about, I built 3 companies. I built 1, 2, and when I talk about companies, it's not the volume or revenue. People talk about a $20 million company. They normally mean $20 million in revenue. When I talk about the company, it's either what I sold it for or what the market value was on a public stock exchange. I built in 1 year a $2 million company. It was my first company. It was in the real estate business. And it was during the early 70s in the recession. I didn't know you couldn't sell real estate in a recession. Nobody told me that when I was going to graduate school. The second company I built was a $50 million company, and it was a marketing company, refining company in the oil and gas business. And the third company I built, that was in 3.5 years. The third company I built in 8 years was Great Western Resources, which if you go to Houston today, and you go to 1111 Bagby, you push the elevator, you go up on the 17th floor, and you go in there, and we have 44,000 square feet of office space, and the company's still there, it's viable, it's one of the most successful natural resource companies in the United States. Just I'm not running it anymore. And what Joe had alluded to a little while ago is true. They ultimately, my partners, the Kuwaiti government, decided I shouldn't be there anymore, and they threw me out in January 1992, and just 5 weeks ago I won a $6 million judgment against them for wrongful termination, which we're in the process of hopefully settling, and I should get a nice fat check here in the next week or two. Chemicals should have stuck around, because a $5 or $6 million deposit ain't chicken feed, you know. And as an aside, for 15 months, all my assets were tied up in a constructive trust. Some lame, well, I won't say that. A judge in Houston, Texas, decided that there was enough possibility that all their charges, 32 charges against me, were true, that they tied all my assets up. And if you have an overhead as big as mine and you can't write a check, you can't sell a stock, a bond, you can't leverage your houses, you can't do anything. For 15 months I lived with no assets that were liquid. I learned what kiting means. I didn't know that concept about writing a check when there's no money at the other end. I didn't understand that because I had never done that to build a business. I did plenty of it to survive for 15 months. Now that's all behind me because all my assets are freed up and my bankers all love me. Everybody's happy. Now if I had lost the lawsuit, you can just imagine where I'd be. I mean, they'd be standing there right now trying to take my cufflinks off. But the thing that I believe in very strongly, and the thing that Turner, Gates, Jobs, more recently Richard Scott, the guy that's doing all the healthcare acquisitions you read about, $9 billion in 45 days, well, Rick Scott used to be my lawyer. Rick Scott used to sit on my right side or my left side doing deals. And he wanted to make as much money as I did. And I said, the only way you do that, Rick, is you get your ass out there. He lives in Fort Worth, still does, still married to the same high school sweetheart he married when he was 19. And you got to do deals. And he went out and started doing deals, and he hooked up with Richard Rainwater of the Bass fame, and has made a lot of money. And so, but the thing that all those guys believe, and Rick Scott, his first year in business, when he left me, he did $45 million in business. That was 1988. Next year, it's estimated he's going to do $10.4 billion in revenue. Because I believe, as those guys believe, that you can have quantum growth. You can have geometric growth. You can have exponential growth. Most of us have been trained, and wrongly, that you have to have arithmetic growth. I heard somebody comment this morning that he's interested in making a lot of money now. I think it was one of the gentlemen, I don't think he's here now, in the accounting business, because in his early years he was interested in building a business. Now he and his fellow partners to clean up, basically is what he said. Well, where I differ is I clean up from the beginning. I don't wait to the end, because I may die. My exit strategy the first time was going public. On my 39th birthday, I went public. I took an option on $60,000 worth of oil property, and I turned it into $50 million in 3.5 months. I plan on cleaning up in the beginning, because I believe very strongly you got to pay yourself first, and I don't mean me personally, but your employees, everybody, from the top to the bottom, from the beginning. Because if in fact your strategy is that we're going to cash in 3 years down the line, 7 years down the line, 10 years down the line, a lot of things happen. They're called economic cycles. And then you get down to that 3, 5, or 7, or 10-year period, and you have dissipated all your retained earnings. There's a guy in the CEO Club in Los Angeles said that in the last 5 years he has dissipated 25 years of net worth accumulation and retained earnings all in 5 years. He's given it back. Now, intellectually, I know he ought to turn the key and close the business down. Yet when I said that in Los Angeles, it was like a turd in a punch bowl. These people looked at me like I was some sort of Nazi, Hitler, or Mussolini or Stalin. I said, it's as plain as the mustache on your face, I told him. You got to turn the key. After the meeting, or during the cocktails before lunch, he took me aside and says, yes, I just don't have the balls. I can't do it. I can't do it. Now, I don't know how many of you fall into that category. And ladies, excuse me, I don't mean to offend anybody when I use graphic examples like that. But what I want to talk about is this. Let's just for a moment pretend, and for those of you that have heard me speak, you've heard this little analogy, that we've all got 100 IQ today, okay? For some of you, I'm giving you a little. For some of you, I'm taking away. And for this example, let's just pretend that I have 100 IQ. I'm giving myself a little. Okay. If we've got 100 IQ, is it possible for anybody to have 10 times higher our IQ? 10 times smarter than us, 1,000? No. I've heard of 200 IQs, I've heard of 220s, I've even heard of a 240 one, but I've never heard of 1,000. So if somebody can't be 10 times smarter than us, can somebody work 10 times harder than us? No, not really. Well, then why are there people that make 10 times more than you? Why? Why are there people that make 1,000 times more than you? Why? That's part of it. No. They think bigger. They think bigger. I didn't like Ted Turner until I heard him talk recently about goal setting. And and I'm 48 years old and I've had a lot of success, thank God. But when I heard him say this, that the one thing that his dad gave him, in addition to leaving him a couple $1 million when his dad died, was, he says, son, set goals that you can achieve and you cannot achieve in your lifetime. I realized why I've only got the money I've got. I'm a small thinker. I think small, or I thought small. Now I've changed my whole idea. When I started Great Western Resources with $820, a leased fax machine, and a phone in my spare bedroom in my house, I set 2 goals. One, I wanted to be in the top 5 income earners for energy executives in the United States, and I wanted to have a $2 billion company. I fell 1.55 billion short on the company, but for 5 years running, I was in the top 5. 1 year, I was the top 1 highest paid energy executives in the United States. What if I had set the goal for 20 billion? Where would I have been today?
10 billion.
That's right. From your lips to the Lord's ears, man. Now, if I can just, after all the preconditioning that I've been through, because I've been on this earth, let's call me 50 for right now. My wife doesn't like this analogy. Let's call me 50. And if you take 24 hours times 365 days and you figure out, I've been on the earth about 470,000 hours of preconditioned thinking. So for those of you that are 25, the ladies, 25 to 30, you just multiply out the hours and figure out how many hours you've been around. For the guys that are a little older than me, that's a lot of hours. And what we've been taught historically is that preconditioned thinking can't be changed. We have all these misconceptions. One of the misconceptions is that cost control is the most important thing in a business. That's baloney. It's revenue. You can never have too much revenue. It's just like you can never have too much success. It's revenue. It's the most important thing for a business that's beginning. And I'm here to tell you, revenue is the most important thing for a business that's continuing to grow. But a lot of us in this room choke our business to death with cost controls. A lot of people in this room choke our businesses to death because we're freaks of nature that have to control. We're control freaks. When I learned, when I was 31 years old in 1976, that I went from a micro thinker to a macro thinker, I've made all my money. Micro to macro. My wife tells me that I was depressed once in 24 years that we've been together, married 20 years. I can't ever remember being depressed, but she says on my birthday in 1976, I was 31 years old, I was sitting on the staircase with my two Great Danes, with a bottle of Jack Daniels, and my two Great Danes were licking the tears up off my cheeks. Now I remember that, but I don't remember it being depressed. What I remember is that I was 10% into my 40s, and I had not accomplished 10% of what I wanted. And I said, Jesus, I'm going to have to hump like hell for the next 9 years to get to where I want to go. I then had a life-changing experience, and by the way, I would recommend 2 books to everybody, and you've heard them before. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, everybody's heard that, and another one is a book called Release Your Brakes by Jim Newman, who founded the organization called the PACE Organization. Jim Newman's semi-retired. In fact, I'm attending his seminar next week in Palm Springs, and I attended his seminar in Palo Mesa, California in 1976, and he made me understand why I hadn't been as successful, and it's because I had not become comfortable with success. And forgive me again for those of you that have seen this, but if those were Jesus Christ, if those were $1,000 bills, and I put a 2x12 here, all of us could walk up and down the 2x12 and pick up the $1,000 bills all day long. No, thank you. Now, just imagine if this 2x12 was 50 stories up. Is there anybody in this room that could go across and pick up a $1,000 bill? Maybe one, okay. Now let's say that your child, your loved one, I used to say spouse, but nobody go across it. Now let's say we could do gasoline on your spouse. Nobody'd run, but you put gasoline on your grandkid or your kid, and a lot of us that struggle across there somehow. That's why you read about women that can lift cars off people, you know, when the car flips over on somebody. It's comfort. Most people aren't more successful because they are not comfortable with the trappings of success. I walk 50 stories up. Ted Turner and Rick Scott walk 100 stories up. Most people walk in the cellar because they think, well, geez, if the wind, it was windy this morning, right? The wind could probably knock me off that board even if it's on the ground, and I may fall over and twist my ankle, and then I couldn't get to work. It's comfort. The air's thin up here. I think that's where the thing Bluebud came from. The air's thin up here. There's not a lot of people up there. And whoever said that it's more difficult to stay on top than get there, that was a smart guy or a smart lady, whoever said that. Because that sure as hell is true. Ted Turner, do you think he's comfortable where he is? Of course he is. Do you think Ted Turner cares what you think? I happen to know Ross Perot. Do you think Ross Perot cares what you think? He only cared a little bit when he was running for office. I don't care what you think. I tell people, if you want a friend, buy a dog. I don't want to be your friend. I don't want to be your friend. I got plenty of friends. Friends are problems. But the comfort, the thinking big is the difference. Another example, because quantum theory or quantum thinking, exponential growth, is not a change in your whole life. It's a marginal shift in effort to get a geometric result. Another example, the Blue Jays just won the World Series. I happened to have the misfortune of being in Toronto that night, trying to catch a plane. actually in Toronto to give a seminar, and nobody wanted to hear me talk, and they paid me $995 a head for one day, and they still wanted to watch the World Series. But right now, if you bat $250, you're going to make $300,000 or $500,000 a year playing professional baseball. If you bat $350, you're going to make $3 or $4 or $5 or $6 or $7 million a year. Roughly accurate. That's one hit per 10 at bats difference. That's a marginal shift, 10%. Most of you fish with fishing poles, and no, most of you fish with a string tied with a line and a hook at the end of your finger. Some of you fish with fly rods. I fish with nets. Ted Turner, Gates, all the guys that I just mentioned, which I don't agree with all these guys, but one thing I do agree with, that they're all successful. And they've all done it the same way. None of these guys are reinventing the wheel vis-a-vis what they're doing. They may have different products. One of the things that I always talk about is Alexander Graham Bell, who's one of my great idols, was, until I found out it took him 25 years and 10,000 experiments to invent the phone. Now, I'm a pretty persevering guy. I don't say no to anything. I can overcome anything. I don't care what it is. But I don't think I would have lasted 10,000 experiments. I would have paid some inventor, like the guy that was in Boston. I would have paid him, and you work on it the next 6 or 8 years. I mean, I wouldn't have waited 25 years and 10,000 experiments. I hear people talk about that they don't get financing. They didn't get the financing because I won't ask the question how many of us need more capital to grow, because I know the answer. Again, the bankers left. Did you tell them what I was going to talk about? Is that why they left? And I talk about how many financial institutions did you go to? And I do some consulting. And they said, we went to 2. We went to 1. I'm here to tell you there is a financial institution, either in the United States or someplace in the world, that will finance every Rufus funky deal in this room. There is. And I make the analogy, I taught for 1 year at where I went to undergraduate school, and I didn't do it the next year because I was so disappointed in the youth of America. We're lucky the Iron Curtain fell. And we're lucky that communism didn't work, because the kids that are coming up in this society, at least the college students I taught, lack a lot of one desire, motivation, and a lot of other things. But the example I give is when I ask the kids, they give you a class on how to get a job, how to write a resume. I didn't realize that. They didn't have that when I was going to school. And I asked the kids, well, how many have you had job offers? Nobody. How many resumes you sent out? 6, 8, 10. In the room, the highest was 30. A friend of mine named Mayor Fidel Vargas, he's the youngest mayor in the United States. He's 23 years old. He went to Harvard, undergraduate, and in between Harvard undergraduate and graduate school, he went home and he decided he was going to run for mayor in a little town called Baldwin Park, California, outside L.A. I said, Fidel, Mayor, how many resumes did you send out? 700, Mr. Peña. 700. How many job offers did you get? 1. My students wilted, like the bone marrow came out of them, because the whole class hadn't sent 700. There is a financial institution someplace in the world that will fund all your funky deals, I'm telling you. No person that I know has called on more financial institutions than I did. From Bangor, Maine to San Diego, from Miami to Seattle. I raised just short of $1 billion in equity and debt when I was going Great Western, when oil went from 40 to 8. When they said money couldn't be raised. And we grew through acquisitions, because I figured out right away I didn't know how to find oil. I mean, I figured that out in about 6 months after drilling 25 or 30 dry holes. So, I mean, I thought people only lost money in tax shelters that couldn't find it. I didn't know the real business was that you couldn't find oil. I mean, I figured that out like that. I mean, although I had a lot of people on the staff that analyzed, and they'd still be analyzed, and we'd be out of business, because one of the things I learned when I went from micro thinking to macro thinking is perfection equals paralysis. Perfection equals paralysis. Too many people in this room, too many people in industry pound numbers to death, especially with computers now. You can turn numbers upside down. You can do 1 million permutations on deals now. And that's now. I can assure you, Ted Turner, and these guys, I don't want to keep mentioning their names, they don't analyze. 99 times out of 100, your first instincts are right. 99 times out of 100. 99 times out of 100, conventional wisdom is wrong. Conventional wisdom is wrong. It's like, I know that I'm not going to change my parents, I'm not going to change my in-laws. So I don't waste time on things that I can't change. I just don't. My parents and my in-laws, especially my in-laws, are going to be that way. They've been that way for 24 years, and they're not going to change. It was in the same house 68 years. So, and now it's a slum, and you got to carry a gun down there, and God protects them down there. They're in their late 80s. Somehow they don't seem to get hurt. So, but it's the same way in business. It's easier to make money if you don't have to change something that you probably aren't going to be able to change at all. There are certain banks, there are certain financial institutions that will never do business with me because of my outrageous precepts of business. Number one, if the bank doesn't want to finance it, I want to do it. By definition, because I've never met, with one or two exceptions, a rich banker. Okay, by definition, if my lawyers don't like it, I want to do it. If my accountants don't like it, I want to do it. Accountants and engineers have the hardest time for quantum thinking because they're trained. Lawyers are next. Accountants, engineers, accountants, lawyers, and that they kind of like a line. Doctors, I mean, they can't do anything right. I mean, that's why they invest so much, are losing so much in investment. But it's not impossible to change that preconditioned thinking. And then when you think about it, accountants, lawyers, and engineers normally have, well, not so much engineers unless you have advanced degrees, have the most education. They've had to be trained the most. So it's tough to get that preconditioned thinking, you know, to there used to be a saying back, our former president, Teflon Ron, used to sell Boraxo soap on 20 Mule Team in the 50s. I don't know if anybody remembers the commercials. Yes. Well, that Boraxo soap would take the hide off you. So in the old days when I sold real estate while I was in college, by the way, in 1969 when I was still going to college, I had the highest closing ratio of any real estate salesman in the country. I had a 94.6% closing ratio. You either bought or you left dead. I mean, there was no in between. I mean, you either bought or you died. I mean, you either went out in a box or you bought from me. That was it. But what I learned is I had an old sales manager named Kelly Norwood who was at Bolt Hall, which is Berkeley's law school, disbarred lawyer who was my sales manager. And he says, Peña, you got to Boraxo their brain clean. In other words, in new computer parlance, we had to erase their data bank. You had to make them forget. And he says, you got to have vision that there's really a lake there in Havasu. There wasn't any lake at the time I was selling it. You got to have vision. You got to see the little dots, the sails across. So you got to, and what we have to do as individuals is a lot of the thinking that we've had and been trained from the time we were in grade school forward is wrong. It's wrong if you want to make a lot of money. It's okay if you just want to be okay. One of the things, and normally I get people's attention, is next time you know, because it's hard to stay focused. We all know that. And one of the things I want you to try to remember as I speak now, remember the passion you had when you first started your business? How excited you were, get up in the morning, want to get there. And then over time, you've gotten beaten down. Over time, Jesus, God, I wish it was Friday. And it's Tuesday. I wish it was Friday. Because time beats you down. But just think of what, for the rest of the time I'm up here, just think about that passion. Try to think of that passion that you had when you couldn't wait to get to work. You wanted to work late because you knew you were growing your business. Because at the beginning of your business cycle, you're growing geometrically by definition because you're coming from ground zero. You can extend those cycles. But next time you lose focus, think of it this way. When you lose focus, you're letting not only yourself down, your business down, but your family down. Now, I've never met one single person I've ever talked to that wanted to do less than their best for their family. And I've met some hard SOBs, but nobody wanted to do less than the best they could for their family. Everybody wants to do the best. So when you start to lose focus next time, just don't think about your business. Don't think about letting yourself down. You're letting your family down. You're letting your grandkids. You're letting your kids, your wife. Some of you don't care if you let your spouse down, but anyway, pretend that it matters whether you let your spouse down or not. But just every time that I start to lose focus, which isn't very often, I think about what I call the children from hell, my 3 children. Dan Jr., who's just like me. Like I spit, and he grew up, and he's only not quite 12. It's frightening to think there's a 12-year-old me running around the country. Derek Stewart, 10 years old, just like me. Kellyanne, a girl. Like Dan Peña, my God. What's the world going to be like when she grows up? But whenever I do lose focus, I think of those 3 little kids, and it just makes me work harder, send faxes at 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. When I do business with people, they have to have a personal fax machine at home, because I want to be able to get a hold of them at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, whenever. And I always, when I some of the people that have approached me since I started doing this in the last year, they want to be my partners. They want to be, and I always make the first appointment where they've got to fight traffic. Not traffic. I mean, well, New York's got big traffic. I thought it was in Boston. New York's got big traffic. So Southern California's got big traffic. You're gonna have to fight traffic. I like to make them fight traffic both ways to see if they'll do it. If they won't make an appointment with me that they got to fight traffic, I don't want to have anything to do with them. That's a red flag. Forget it. I don't care what your deal is. Because when we got to suck up our pantyhose and it gets tough, I mean, if you're not even willing to fight traffic, what are you going to do when it gets tough? So I have this little checklist, which is part of my seminar, that I go through. That 1, traffic; 2, meeting on weekends; 3, Saturday nights. You're not willing to do those 3 things, you're not doing business with Dan Peña, and you're not doing business with anybody that I advise. Now you just think to yourself, some of you in this room aren't willing to do those 3 things now. Mike Milken's first meeting was at 3:15 in the morning. Second meeting was at 4:15. His last meeting was midnight. I have to sleep more than that. I mean, I can't live on 2-3 hours sleep. I mean, I got to sleep at least 6 hours. The older I get, they say when I get real old, I'll need less sleep. Maybe that'll be good. But it's about focus, and it's about not letting yourself down. And this is the thought process that these guys go through. Now, one of the things, and it's important to realize, super success isn't for everybody. And one of the things, and a guy did, I forget the guy's name at the management course, CEO management course at Laguna, he said it best. He got up at the end during the closing moments of my final talk, and he said, Dan, you made me feel all right to know at least I don't have to go out and kill the world. Because one of the things that I do say, and there used to be a book, still is a book called I'm Okay, You're Okay. It was written in the early 70s, but basically said, I'm okay, you're okay, whatever you want to do is all right, and you know it, whatever I want to do is all right. And it's the same in business. You don't have to be a Dan Peña or at that end of the continuum. What I try to do in my coaching is I try to get you just an inch closer to my end of the continuum. Because even an inch closer is going to make you more successful. It's going to make your business grow. It's going to get you more focused. One of the key ingredients, somebody asked me earlier, what are the 2 things that differentiate, that's not how you put it. What was the question you asked me, the 2 things?
Yes.
Yeah.
You had said to me that the number 1 question people ask you is, how did you do it?
Yeah.
And I said to you, well, I know you did it, so I wouldn't be concerned about that. My question would be, how would you do it if you were my business?
Okay.
Specifically my business.
Okay, well, and the methodologies are the same. I've built companies, and I've helped other companies build, irrespective of the industry. The only thing that I'm really weak on is manufacturing. But I mean, the principles of management are the same, but I don't know anything about manufacturing. Closest I know about anything about manufacturing is coal mining, which has nothing to do with manufacturing. But the biggest differentiation, and the thing that has to be, in my judgment, of paramount importance to you is staying focused. Most people that have been successful in this room probably have diversified into other things. See, conventional wisdom says you should diversify so you can lessen your risk, lessen your exposure. That's wrong. You want to do more of the same. Because contrary to what was alluded to earlier, companies only go out of business because they're mismanaged. This baloney about, well, interest rates went against me, healthcare, the laws are changing, that's all crap. It's because they're mismanaged. Yet, the 99,000 companies that went out of business filed Chapter 11 or 7 in the last 12 calendar months. You can talk to those CEOs, those entrepreneurs, and every single one of them is going to say that something went against them, interest rates. That's not true. It's because they've been mismanaged. It's because either their strategy was wrong, it was implemented wrong. I would rather have a weak plan that's implemented with enthusiasm than a dynamite plan that's not implemented at all. I bet you a lot of you in this room have great plans, but they're implemented with less than great enthusiasm. I mean, who would you rather do business with? Who would you rather play sandlot football with? An enthusiastic guy that says, throw me the ball, John. I can beat the SOB in the flat. Throw me the ball, John. Or, well, there's a 50-50 chance that, it is raining and the water, it could slip through my fingers. Who are you going to throw the ball to? It's the same in business. You go into your banks. I walked in with a client one day. In fact, we turned around and walked in. The closer we got to the elevator, and I said, come on, Henry, we're not going. We're canceling the meeting. Because I'm not going to go in there like that because you're going to shake hands and you got water in your hand. I mean, because you're perspiring, because you're so nervous. So we went back, we canceled the appointment. I told them we had a flat tire and we couldn't make it. And then we came back again because business is the same way. I mean, you want to show your best foot, not your worst case. One of the things we did as kids, and when I go through this analogy, when I had my first date, I just had my 30-year high school reunion, and the girl that this analogy's about, I saw, who, she looks like my mother now, but when I practiced as a junior in high school to ask her out, I got in front of a mirror, and I said, Judy, would you like to go to the dance with me? And when I used to practice things to ask my dad, which he always said no, but I practiced a lot. We used to do things like that when we were kids. We practiced. Athletes practice. Practice makes perfect. Whoever said that was smart. Why do athletes practice? How many of you practice being successful? How many of you practice calling on banks? If I still practice, and Rick Scott still practices, I mean, why wouldn't you want to practice? There's no answer. I practice. Even though this isn't one of my set talks, I practice in my own mind the 8 or 10 points I wanted to cover. Macro to micro and the various things that I've gone through. And I'm an accomplished speaker. But I practiced. I practiced when I'm going to go make a presentation. When I first made my presentation to the Kuwaiti government. First time I made my presentation to the Israeli government, which I think is worth repeating. In 1983, I wanted to do business with the Israelis because I thought that if I could find oil in Israel, because I was looking for a quick way to get a grand slam. I said, if I could find oil in Israel, and I'm not Jewish, I would have accolades so great that, I'd have to hire secretaries just to keep track of them. So I finagled a way to get invited by the then Minister of Energy, Modayeh, who was a lawyer. And Minister Modayeh sent me a nice invitation, and we flew over there, and my two partners and I flew TWA, coach. I still remember how much a ticket cost. From Los Angeles to Tel Aviv, round trip was $3,300 for the three of us. I hired a high-priced consultant who flew first class from L.A. to New York, Concorde, New York to Paris, the rest, first class from Paris to Tel Aviv. $10,000 round trip. So we got $13,000 invested plus hotels, and one of the interesting things is that I met Mark Spitz. He was there. He was selling some deal. I forget what it was. And you talk about practice. How long did he practice to get those 7 or 8 gold medals that he got? So we're in front of Mr. Modayeh, and we get done with our about 40-minute presentation. And he said, with the greatest respect, Mr. Peña, why should Arm & Hammer, who was here yesterday, by the way, at that time I didn't know Arm & Hammer was Jewish. I didn't know he was Jewish. Arm & Hammer was here, Occidental Petroleum, Superior Oil, and they named all these huge companies that, if anybody can find oil, and there's a lot of jokes about why do the Arab countries have oil and why Israel doesn't. It's just across. There's all kinds of stories, especially in the oil business, which is a good question. I've asked myself 1,000 times, why just a matter of just 1,000 yards. So he says, why would we pick you? Little company. The company was called Great Western Energy, which was one of the subs that we had at the time. And I thought real quickly, and this is about enthusiasm. I said, he's right. I didn't say this. I'm thinking he's right. What am I going to do? I jumped up and I said, and the bodyguards all got nervous when I jumped up like this. And I'm wearing suits like this, and they're wearing cut-off. And it's hot. And I said, with the greatest respect, do you know the difference between chicken shit and chicken salad? He steps back, and then it seems like an eternity, maybe it's 6 or 8 seconds. He says, yes, I do know the difference. And I says, Mr. Minister, I mean, you've been dealing with the chicken shit, and I am the chicken salad. He instantly pointed to Dr. Barak, who was a PhD from MIT, managing director of the Israeli National Oil Company, said, cut a deal with Mr. Peña. He says, I think he's got just the right chutzpah. He may just find us oil. Unfortunately, 6 weeks later, the Lebanese war broke out. They invaded Lebanon. And, I mean, their $60 million budget went to zero. And because that money went into funding the war, and that never happened. But it was the enthusiasm that I put forth. Of course, one of my partners was Jewish. He just slid he wanted to get under the carpet. And we went forward, and for 6 or 8 months, we acted as if the deal was still going to come to fruition, even though we knew that the Israeli National Oil Company wasn't going to fund the deal. And we acted as if we had no limits to our abilities, which is one of the things that I preach to people. My young son, first year in Little League, he batted .640 this year. .640. Now, see, December 8th last year, my 2 sons asked me, Dad, we want to play baseball. It's a really important point. It's about preconditioning. They played cricket. We had lived in Scotland. So I bought them baseball gloves, mitts, and all this stuff, and I got a book on teaching Little League or coaching Little League. I never played baseball. I played football and golf in high school and college. So at where I live at the castle in Scotland, I measured out a diamond. I didn't know Little League diamonds were smaller than regular diamonds. And so they couldn't throw the ball from center field to anything. I mean, barely over second base. When they went to practice or when they went for the tryouts, the kids threw the arm like Brooks Robinson, who Baltimore Orioles for a long time ago. I mean, they had my young son was the only kid in his league that could throw somebody out from home plate to second base. They had arms like bazookas because they were conditioned. Derek batted .640. He figured out batting .250, .300 is good enough. He batted .278. Derek batted .640. Derek, I said, you get on base even if you have to step into the pitch, son. And that's what he did. He also had more walks. He says, if you get behind in the count, you step into the pitch, son. And that's what he did. Now, he'd come with lumps, and my wife was always busting my back about it. She says, he's going to get hit in the head one of these days. That's exactly right. That's exactly what I said. He's wearing a helmet. Now, the only way he got knocked out is one day I was pitching to him, trying to practice with him, and I knocked him out myself because we weren't wearing helmets. And I bring him home, and he's got the string of the baseball on his cheek. And my wife says, "What the hell happened? Did Dan throw the ball at him?" And we said, "We're not going to tell Mom about this." And then as soon as I leave to go someplace, my wife's working on him, trying to get him. She says, "Dad hit me with a baseball, but I promise not to say." But he wasn't preconditioned. Now it would be almost impossible for him to do it next year because now he knows. He led the league in batting. They won the title, their little title, and so it's going to be impossible. But you have been preconditioned. One of the things that I'll tell you, and we have a banker in the room, right? Yes, I can tell by some of my bankers. I'm here to tell you all interest rates are negotiable. They are negotiable. My mother and father would never even dream to negotiate a mortgage rate. That's all I would do. I don't care what the bank says. But there's many, many things that we do in business that we've been preconditioned. Let me give you another example of quantum geometric thinking. When President Kennedy, they just opened some deal in Boston for John Kennedy Museum in England, on that day that he was inaugurated in 1960, he pointed at the moon and said, "Within this decade, we will put a man on the moon." Anybody remember that? Yes. And they would come back saying it'll be before the Russians, and there was all kinds of other things. Do you realize, as we know it today, there was no NASA? We had no infrastructure. We didn't even have a rocket that could get a 200-pound payload up. We didn't have rockets as good as Scud missiles. A lot of things happened, didn't they?
Very short period.
And we put that guy on the moon, and on October something or other, I take one step for whatever he said, giant step. That's what I profess. When you're in your business plan, and when you're thinking about your business, pretend that you're a long jumper, 30 foot. All they look at is the 30 feet. They don't look at all the things that happen in between. They look at their mark that they hit off of, and they look at the 30 foot, and that's all. They're not thinking about all the machinations they have to go through. When President Kennedy said that, he didn't think about all the machinations. When I set a $2 billion goal and to be in the highest paid executives in the United States, I didn't think of all the machinations. A lot of things happen. When energy gets going, momentum they call it, positive momentum feeds on itself. Success begets success. And successful people want to do business with successful people. I made a comment at the convention. I said, when I play golf, I either play golf with somebody that's better than me, which is hard to find, because I'm a good golfer, or it's somebody that's in a place that I want to be. I play golf at Bel Air Country Club a lot, and it has more retired Fortune 500 CEOs than any other country club in America. I mean, every foursome has got 3 retired CEOs, either that or Jerry West, general manager of the Lakers. I mean, and when, what's his name, from Boston says, I'll play with anybody as long as they can take off work in the afternoon. And what I'm here to say is you are what you think about. You're going to be who you are, who you hang around. And it's especially important, even if you're not a youngster, because you can change preconditioned thinking. You can. I've seen people change, like Ray Kroc, 57 years old. You only hear about a few of those, because only a few of the people that when they get to that age, or in their 60s or 70s, only if you believe that you can change your thinking. You can. And I have changed my thinking just since I heard Ted Turner say, son, his father speaking to him, set goals that you can't accomplish in your lifetime. And that's changed my life, and I'm 48. Thank you very much.
Fun part's the question. Jeff?
Yes, sir.
And what the hell do you do for relaxation?
I lift weights. I run on a running machine. I don't run outdoors anymore. And I Stairmaster. And that's what I do. I normally try to do that an hour a day, but it depends on what time of the day. I have a gym in my home. I have an office in Los Angeles. I only go to it 2 days a month, 1 day every other week. I'm going to my office. I found the office too disruptive. 4 million calls and thousands of, not thousands, a lot of faxes. And so I don't do, I have an office at my home, and I have an office in my home in Houston and at the council. So, but I work, I get up normally at 7 in the morning. I'm in the office by 7:30, my office in my home. And although I may go to a Little League game or my daughter's ballet, which is one of the reasons I stay home now, is because I want to try to, I don't like to use the word makeup for the years I wasn't there. In 1987, there's a thing that I call pay price to action. It's what you're willing to pay for the success that you think you want. Because all the problems and challenges, and I still call them problems. I don't like this 90s challenges crap. I mean, they're problems. Let's just say we're all 10 pounds overweight. We know what it takes to lose 10 pounds, don't we? Sure. We don't care. We still drink, eat. At least I do. I should lose 10 pounds. So what? I like to drink a half a bottle of gin every night, and I don't care. We all know what it's going to take to make our business grow stronger. In 1987, I was away from my family 242 days. 242. Only reason I know that is because the Inland Revenue, the taxing authority in the UK, chases my butt, and they keep track of me going in and out of the country. And at that time, I lived in the United Kingdom. And my daughter was just born. She carries a British passport. She was just born. So the first year of her life, I was gone 242 days. I tell my wife, she didn't know. Now, psychiatrist buddy of mine says, Dan, they know when you're not there. They know. So that was a price that I was willing to pay. And so for relaxation now, I try to make it part of my work. And I take my children once in a while to hear me speak. My son was here. I gave a big speech, commencement speech. Well, I went to school a couple of years ago, and the reporters came up and asked him, Dan Jr., they call him Mr. Peña, what do you think of your dad's speech? He says, I've heard that all my life. And he said, which I made him not put in the paper, he says, that's that 5 credos crap Dad preaches. He says, I heard that all my life. And unlike most journalists, he kept his word and he didn't put it in the 5 credo crap. Wouldn't sound great coming from a 10-year-old kid. But I find business relaxing. I find making money a lot of fun. It sure as hell better. I've been poor, I've been rich, and whoever said that too. I mean, I like it. And all these guys, like Rick Scott and these guys, and I wrote a letter to Rick here recently to ask him if he would consider doing some of my council seminars in the summer. for old time's sake, because he's from Scotland. His family's Scottish, so maybe we will. But, I mean, they find business relaxing. I like to play golf. I'm a pretty good golfer. But I find this invigorating. I mean, Joe asks me every time I say, why do you want to do this, Dan? This is a tough business. I plan on dominating the personal development business. Everybody, and is this still?
Yeah.
Oh.
You can say it, I'll clean it up.
Okay. Everybody that is in the personal development business today, including the very biggest names.
Like what?
What?
Like what name?
His last name, it starts with an R. It doesn't have a pot to piss in. They got no money. And all the money they do have, they made it by selling tapes, books, and putting asses on seminar seats. I'm the only guy in the country that we can find that has really built a company, not once, but twice and 3 times, that's actually doing this. So I can relate to your problems. You ask some of your business problems to some of these other guys, they look at you like, they give you some hocus-pocus marketing answer, make more phone calls. Or, insurance, I heard a guy at insurance salesman say, well, how do I get my sales up? Make more phone calls. Now, the guy knew that. I mean, he didn't, but he wanted to know about, and I sold insurance. I was once the leading insurance salesman on Wall Street in the 70s.
Tell us about your castle in Scotland. Why do you live in Scotland and what's it like?
In
1984,
I moved to the UK as part of a goal that I had, and I took my company public, and I retired at age 39 because that was a goal I had. If I had set 35, see, by the way, I don't believe in time limits to setting goals, and we don't have time to go through that, but I retired, and I wanted my family to be raised in a different social economic milieu than my wife and I. My wife's adopted. I'm an only child. My dad was a policeman. Her dad was a meter reader. Is that right? Gas meter reader, yeah. And I wanted to be in a different environment, so we moved there and we found a great estate. Lords of London is called the finest appointed estate in the United Kingdom. It's a very special place. It's cost a lot of money to refurbish, and it's one of the great places in Great Britain. And when I decided to go in this business a year ago, I decided I wanted to have, and I believe the chairman of Chemical Bank said what he was saying is perception is reality. And yesterday's dreams are today's realities. That was my dream, and what better metaphor to teach people in. So I give a very closed workshop, if you will, a week seminar. I only take 6 people, 6 couples. And we said we dress for dinner twice a week, black tie. Peter, my butler, serves us cognac in the library, and we discuss business problems. We play a lot of golf, a lot of tennis. We only work at the seminar 4 or 5 hours a day for 4 days, and 1 day, half a day. And because it's light till 10, 11 o'clock at night, for those of you that play golf or tennis, I mean, we have a lot of fun. And we've isolated or devoted 3 weeks in May, in May, beginning of June, for the CEO Club. I give many more than 3. And you'll be getting a letter in the next week or 2 that outlines it, and we're going to have a lot of fun. We've already got a lot of interest from CEO Club members, and we've already got a lot of people that are going. But it's a great place to have a lot of fun. And it's if you want to be pampered and live in the lifestyle that you should get used to. And that's the whole point of it. It's like when I take people from the barrio to my place in California overlooking the Pacific Ocean, it's because I want to show them that you can do it in your lifetime, just like I did. I take them to where my house was in the ghetto, and I take them to my place, 3.5 acres overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and I show them pictures of the castle, because you can do it. And you can do it in my lifetime, and it doesn't take that long. I mean, if you're willing to, how much you want to sacrifice. Yes, sir.
There are a few things that you mentioned that I wanted to ask you about. Perception is reality. You also mentioned that cost is not the issue, but revenues are. And with
Cost control.
Cost control. Correct. Revenues are. With those things in mind, and also thinking in terms of a quantum leap in your thinking process, going from where you are today to that unachievable goal, how would you deal with delegation? And also related to that would be if you are presumably you have an organization in your company now which is coping with the situation as it is. How do you make that quantum leap?
Good question.
How do you restructure that?
Okay. Quickly, number 1, if you're a control freak and you can't delegate, and you can't give, or you won't give, because you won't give full authority and full responsibility. And if you won't promise not to eat their butt out when they make a mistake, and if you won't do those things, then what I'm about to say is impossible. because you have to delegate both authority and responsibility. I allowed my employees to make $1 million mistakes. Rick Scott on the front page of the Wall Street Journal just a few days ago said one of the reasons that he can run this big organization now with 138,000 employees, whatever he's got, is because he allowed all his little district managers, which he's got millions of, to make $1 million decisions without going up the ladder. Now, you know that a lot of those $1 million decisions are going to be wrong. First of all, because it's the first time they're ever making them, and they're not used to it. But who knows? So you have to let loose. Less control is more control. I couldn't have made a fraction of what I did if I had kept the reins in tight. And you got to realize they're going to make mistakes. It's like your kids. For those of you that have kids, I mean, they make mistakes. And you show them the values, and hopefully as they grow older, I'm not there yet, so I'm a little weak on the kids raising part, not on the business growing part. I mean, that they'll learn. I allowed my people to make many, many decisions. And when I came in, it was only when they had a big, big problem. We bought Bow Valley USA in late 86, early 87, and my subordinates were handling it, and it fell out of bed. The Canadian government came down on us, Chemical Bank came down on us, everybody came down on us, and I came out of retirement to resurrect that. And so, but you've got to let loose. You've got to let loose. So, and to build an organization, the kinds of people you want are, one, people that will come during traffic, work Saturday nights, that don't know that there's Christmases, Hanukkah, birthdays. I've been on record as saying, holidays, birthdays, Christmas, Hanukkah are for poor people. The reason why I celebrate Friday the 13th as my anniversary, even though I was married on Friday the 13th, is because I have missed 16 of 20 anniversaries. So my wife and I celebrate all Friday the 13th because at least Dan's going to be home some of them. Okay? The only reason my oldest son, who's born on January 1, I've been to most of his birthdays because normally our deal closes by New Year's Eve, and I'm home New Year's Eve to see my kid on January 1. All the rest of them, I was at the management course for Derek's birthday. I was in trial for Kelly's birthday. And you've got to make those sacrifices. And more importantly, the people that work for you or that you're going to hire, you have to share your obsession with them. You have to make it their obsession. And the way I did it is money. Money. I gave away equity to all companies I started, to the key employees. I gave it. I didn't sell it to them. I didn't make it an option. I said, here's 10% of the company. Here's 10% of the company. Here's 5% of the company. And then when I got to be a public company, which you can't do that, then I gave them massive options. We had millions and millions of shares of options. Plus we had all the other compensation things that we had. We had scholarship funds for the bright kids. We had scholarship funds for the dumb kids. I mean, we had a lot of things to make them a part of the growth process. Although, as I said at lunch, 10 years in our own business, we lost money 2 years. The employees only bitched about the 2 years. They forgot the 40 or the 200% bonuses that they made in the good years, and that's part of life. I mean, I don't know how you overcome that. I wasn't successful at that. What I did very successfully was we only had 2 down years. I mean, I decided not to participate in the energy recession. In the businesses that I consult for now, I go through a whole Barrasso process. I don't care what the newspapers say. You know what? Try this. Take newspapers from 5, 10, 20 years ago, if you can get them at the library, Wall Street Journal, and read the columns.
Same, except
Same.
things are different.
But CNN's different. CNN's different. But I mean, it's the same. It's the worst recession in recent memory. It's the worstest. I mean, how many worstest, as my kids would say, can you have? I mean, it's not. It's not. They told Ted Turner he was a nut 10 years ago when he started, whenever he started CNN. 10, 12. Yeah, I still remember. He's a nut. All these guys that have vanguard ideas, they're nuts. Now, maybe Mr. Turner is a little nuts, but he's my kind of nuts. I mean, for sure, he's my kind of nuts. And I find myself, the older I get, maybe it's the less tolerant I get. On one hand, I get more tolerant with people that I can't change because I know they're going to be that way forever. But I get less tolerant of people that make fun of people that are vanguard, that do unique things. And I've been a guy that's been against the grain all my life. I mean, 86 times I've been told I can't do that, and 86 times I've been able to do it. Yes.
Last 2 questions, Susan, and then Leslie. Don't forget to leave your name tags when we go. Susan?
Yes.
I
Yes,
can't
ma'am.
tell you how much I agree with you and would love to have you lecture to my company anytime. There's
By the way, I'm doing a special seminar for women. But anyway, I took that.
there's one thing that I'm concerned about and I'm confused about, and that is, you mentioned Mike Malcolm. What about integrity?
No. I didn't mean it that way.
You
have to draw the line.
Good business and fair business.
I've never done anything dishonest, immoral. But see, I thought with Michael Milken's principle of letting people find finance that couldn't, I'm 100% behind. What he did, or what he purported to do, or what they proved he did, was obviously wrong. That's not what I mean. I mean his concept of taking people that couldn't find finance and developing the junk market business. By the way, I'm one of the first guys he ever turned down. My claim to fame, he turned me down. He didn't like my deal. It gave me that much more resolve. I know him through Lowell because one of my partners went to law school with his brother. So you have to draw the line. Integrity will out. One of the reasons that lawsuit was so important to me, and I won all 32 counts, and the reason I didn't settle and I wanted a jury verdict is because the cloud is gone. Now all the people that say, Dan, it doesn't make any difference, you got sued for all that stuff, but it really did. Even my bankers, now they love me again. Dan, when you need to come out, where are you going to put that money, Dan? Where are you going to put that money? But no, integrity, my integrity, my honor is much more important. There's 2 or 3 things worth dying for, and that's one of them, integrity.
Last question.
Yes, ma'am.
How much do you think it would have cost you in terms of your success had you decided to make it a point to be there for your kids' birthdays or your anniversary?
I don't know. All I know is a lot of deals that I did wouldn't have gotten done because there's a critical mass in a deal. There's a critical mass. There's a timing factor that when the deal, it's like an old friend of mine who's since passed away, used to be president of our drilling company, said, Dan, there's a time to bring the cow home to milk. There's a time in a deal to bring the cow home to milk. And sometimes that's on your 16th anniversary. Sometimes that's on Christmas. I made the Israelis sign my deal on the Sabbath at 10:30 at night Friday because I was dealing with Orthodox, and they told me, and I knew I'd have the most leverage if I could get them past sundown on Friday night, and that's what I did. And it killed them. It killed them to do that. They said they wouldn't. I said, well, I'm leaving. So it was a bluff. It's like 2 cars going to collide, and they found out I'm on the way to the airport. They had to stop me. They had the police stop me. And they brought me back and we signed it. There's a time when the cow, you got to bring it home to milk. And a lot of times those are on days you ought to be with your loved ones. But I don't know anybody that made a lot of money in a balanced way. One closing comment. Napoleon Hill, in his book, Think and Grow Rich, and all his tapes, he interviewed 500 people over 20 years. Got paid no money. They said he was an idiot. Only 3 people of the 500, 3, Burroughs, Edison, and Carnegie, were almost happy. 3 of the 500. Super success ain't for everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, if you want to hunt with the big dogs, you got to get up off the porch. 3, now just think of that. 3 people out of 500. Thank you very much.
Good job.
As I said at the beginning of this introduction to Dan's speech at the Harvard Club, there's a lot of great lessons. I think one of the most important lessons here is that we know what to do oftentimes. Doing it is a lot different, and taking action is absolutely critically important to success. So I hope you learned a lot of lessons from that. There's a ton of takeaways, and I think if you implement them, you will see that you're much, much more successful. Okay, so if you have any questions or comments or ideas for future episodes, please email bruce@brucewhipple.com. And if you're not already on our mailing list, head over to brucewhipple.com and sign up and grab any of the free reports. That'll put you on the mailing list. There is a lot of free information you can use to acquire already profitable businesses. This is Bruce Whipple. Thanks for listening to the Business Acquisition Podcast. And remember, you miss 100% of the opportunities you fail to take. And procrastination truly is the thief of time. So do something today, please. Your future self will be proud of you.